Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight, and inspiration.
Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Candice Bloch, and today I'm super excited to chat about HBO Max's two-part documentary, Billy Joel and So It Goes, with the film's Emmy Award-winning executive producer, Steve Cohen. Steve is Billy's longtime lighting designer, creative director, trusted collaborator, and most importantly, unconditional friend. He was handpicked by Billy Joel to build a team that would tell his story in this documentary, and I'm so excited to learn more about the process. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And we're so happy to have you. So sound and visuals go hand in hand so often, whether it's a score and soundtrack for a film or the stage production or lighting for a concert. And that's kind of how you got connected to Billy Joel in the first place as his lighting designer, almost from the very beginning. But you also have this 5-decade-long career in lighting design and producing where you've worked with not only Billy Joel, but many other big names in music, such as Elton John, Justin Timberlake, Mariah Carey, Lenny Kravitz, the Eagles, Reba McEntire, NSYNC, and many more. So what initially brought you to lighting design, and how do you think about it and approach providing the visual element to songs?
Well, in 1974, when I was 20 years old, the lighting industry for music was very unsophisticated. And I often say that my first lighting system was very sophisticated. It was made up of a bunch of Volkswagen headlights and some extension cords. And that's not that far from the truth. We were touring with conventional lighting gear that was basically used for theaters, and we figured out a way to throw it on temporary structures and take it on the road. And, it was an industry that didn't exist. I had a passion for music. I had a little bit of a theater background. Of course, I never made it through high school, so I was ditching classes and going to my friend's college theatrical, classes and learning all about tech theater, but not really doing it officially because I had an eye to doing something else. And I started a lighting company and cold called a bunch of managers and ended up taking an interview with Billy's sound engineer and tour manager and manager at the time. And we did a little bit of a song and dance. They saw something in me and basically hired me to do a very small headline tour that Billy was going out. This is during the Street Life Serenade album had just come out. Piano Man was, sort of a turntable marginal hit. And he was starting to do a couple of small headline venues, and they needed a lighting system. Went out on the road, put something together with, duct tape and shoe polish, and we resonated. I was able to do something visually to the music that had never been done before. Billy sat after the show and said, something happened tonight that didn't happen. It was the same band. It was the same music. It was the same set list, but the audience responded in a different place than they ever had before. And we just figured by process of elimination that it was the lighting. And I don't know, it just, we became connected that way. And I think that, at that time, the only way you could express something visually, because remember, there were no video screens, right. There was no graphics, there was really no set design. Very few bands would ever take anything more than some risers with some, art on the front of the kick drum. So we kind of grew together, and it became pretty apparent that lighting was effective enough for this performer that was really the essence of all of the greatest principles of longtime, successful entertainers. And I enhanced the music. And, the industry's now exploded. I mean, after 5 decades, it's $1 billion industry. I mean, everyone sees what Taylor and Beyonce and The Weeknd and all these people put out on the road, Madonna for years, the Rolling Stones, So I'm very fortunate that I started out at a time when we sort of made the first omelets. We sort of did the first things. And during the times when Billy wasn't working, I was, working for other artists at various times as this industry was growing. But I always came back because we were joined at the hip.
That's awesome. But yeah, so you grew with lighting. I mean, that sounds exciting to kind of like learn the new technologies as they're emerging and sort of be at the forefront of all that, like from its beginning. Was there a particular show or even like a song within a show from anyone you've worked with that kind of stands out as where the lighting designs were like super special to you, like that really stands out, or super complex?
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing to be able to light Funeral for a Friend for Elton John, or Vision of Love from Mariah Carey, or Hotel California from the Eagles. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do all of those things. But I think how I was able to move into those other artists' world is from the baseline creativity that Billy's music gave to me as a lighting designer. You know, the first song I ever heard them do in rehearsals was a song called The Ballad of Billy the Kid, which was basically, if you think about it, Billy wrote the song as an homage to soundtracks. You know, he loved The Magnificent Seven and he always wanted to write a movie soundtrack. So that was sort of the motivation. So it was a very cinematic sounding song that the lighting became, you know, the extension of that cinema with the dynamics of color and composition. And I think that, and, you know, of course you get a song like Angry Young Man or Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, which are percussive and dynamic, and the lights can, you know, react to them, you know, and sort of push certain moments in the song. So I think those were really important songs for me to develop my lighting style, which is, you know, composition and timing. And between timing and composition, that's the essence of what I think lighting for music really is. You know, I think that there's an emotional connection with lighting, just like there is for music. And if you can marry the two in a way where they enhance one another and they propel one another and they lift the emotion, you win. You know, and I think regardless of how good the technology gets, that's the essence of it. You got to be good at that before. You know, otherwise, it's the tail wagging the dog. The technology then drives you to make decisions about visuals that sometimes don't serve, you know, the end result, which is an emotional effect.
Yeah, and no matter the tool, it still has to be wielded by an artist.
Right.
So getting back to Billy Joel specifically, this documentary marks your shift to a full-time focus on film and television producing. Can you explain more about how things evolved from you being lighting designer to creative director of Billy's visual projects to now wanting to focus more on these screen-based mediums?
Well, you know, I think it's all about telling stories. And I think that I've been telling stories through the visuals for a very long time. And I think that, you know, the opportunity to be able to, you know, focus on telling a particular story of something that I knew very, very well, that I had a great deal of direct involvement, because it's basically I lived this story, I think was sort of a natural progression. I've done production. I've produced, you know, concert films and a couple of other documentaries, 4 other documentaries before, that were all Billy centric. I did Last Play at Shea, you know, 12 years ago, which was really my first documentary, my first full feature documentary that I produced. So it's not something that's new. I think the focus for me now is I find it motivating to tell these stories. And I think that my passion for lighting design and touring production, I think, shifted into wanting to originate material that other people could execute. So I think that's part of it. And listen, creativity is creativity. Production is production. So what I also find is that the experience of doing live touring, which is a completely different discipline than doing television production or scripted or narrative or documentary filmmaking, has given me some tools that are very advantageous to executing these projects. We always come from a finite schedule. When we're touring, we come with a budget that is really, really structured, so that when I come into these projects, you know, I bring a different set of experience tools. So, and it's refreshing to people who do it a lot. So I think that's it. I think more than anything for me, I'm at this place in my life where I want to tell stories.
Yeah.
And, you know, you get there, and I'm very fortunate to be able to have, you know, the support of Billy, the support of the Billy organization, that puts me in a situation where I can field a lot of offers. I get everything to my desk that relates to Billy, right? From a television idea, from scripted idea, from animation to documentaries. Billy trusts me to vet all of these things. And in that bulk of communication, I get relationships with people who have other thoughts and other projects. So, I get to option books. I get to do all that other stuff. It's fun. It's like a second act.
That's so
for me.
cool. That's really fun. So I take it then, and I don't know if this is correct, but are you the most personally connected to Billy out of the production team putting the documentary together?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm his creative director.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, this isn't the first time people have come to ask to do a documentary. We went down the road a couple of different ways and a couple of different times, and it just didn't feel like the timing was right. So that when the timing did feel right, it was only natural that I became the sort of conduit to putting the team together. And what was really important was that Billy, in making this film, had nothing to do with it. I mean, basically had nothing to do with it. And that was on purpose. He said, I'm tired of telling my story. My stories are in my song. I'm tired of talking about my life. I'm tired of talking about my experiences. Let someone else tell it. I'm not going to tell it. And in fact, his attitude from the beginning was, there's enough archives. Steve, you know where the archives are. You know where the bodies are buried. You know where to find this stuff. Provide the filmmakers with all the information that they need to tell their story. I don't want to participate. What was interesting about Susan Lacey is that Susan Lacey came on board. Her and I had a meeting before this was even a reality, and we hit it off. And I had said to Bill that, if the time comes, this is the kind of filmmaker I think we would like to do this, because, her history in American Masters, the fact that she is an artist herself, the fact that she comes from a classical music background, a classical music family, she felt like the right person. And more importantly, her body of work is very respectful of the actual creative process, which is all Billy cares about. Like, if you're going to tell the story about the art and the music, because that's all that's important. Through developments and through, sort of serendipitous meetings and how these things seem to come together, Susan got back into the mix. And when Billy decided that, okay, let's do this.
So was that, do you think, why it was finally time that he was willing to do a documentary? Because you said there were possibilities before, and then
listen, Monday morning quarterback this thing. Do I think that had a contributing factor? Yes. But really, at the end of the day, he woke up one day, we talked about it. I had a pitch from another producer, and he said, yeah, go ahead, let's explore this. So I just think he was ready to let someone else tell the story. And how Susan got back into the mix was kind of a fun thing. And, it just seemed like it made sense. She's from Sag Harbor. He lives in Sag Harbor. I live in East Hampton. She's an artist. As it turns out, she loves classical music as much as he does. As it then turns out, she comes from a Holocaust survivor's background, which Billy does as well. So they both had, stuff to be, to have, to ping back and forth to. So, things happen for a reason. And I think that's what happened.
Awesome. So continuing a little bit more about that. So Susan Lacey, one of the directors, there's also Jessica Levin.
Yeah.
And then can you talk a little bit more about pulling the team together to create the documentary?
Well, yeah. So Susan has this wonderful production team, and Jessica was her lead producer for 20 some odd years. And it was very interesting because Susan has had a top line awareness of Billy Joel, but really wasn't as familiar with the body of work. She didn't know how funny he was. It was sort of like a voyage of discovery, which I also thought was really great because it was someone coming in without a preconceived idea or a preconceived notion of what this man really was.
Yeah, you have that balance of objectivity.
Right. And Jessica's a crazy Billy Joel fan, knows every record, knows every song. Also is as respectful of the creative process as anybody, and also knows how to work with Susan to craft this. And I think she started out as a producer, and about, 6 or 7 months into it, Susan was like, no, you need to co-direct this with me because you can't just be producing, because your narrative sense and your vision for the story is vital to telling the story. And Susan and I have a relationship. Jessica and I have a relationship, and it's very different, the way we communicate with each other. And I was sort of like, I don't say that I was the ref, but I say that I would hear both of them. Yeah. And of course, very, very difficult for me to keep my mouth shut, but I had to keep my mouth shut because this is an independent film. I am part of the Billy Joel world. I'm an executive producer. But the world out there immediately decides, well, if there's someone from the camp involved, then it's an authorized biography, which is not what this is. So I had to be very circumspect on offering my opinions. People will say what they want to say. They'll decide what they want to decide. But in reality, I knew that in order to make this thing correct in Susan's mind, because she was not going to do a film that was going to be in any way high geography, I had to put myself in a place of, you want to go down this road of developing this storyline, then it's my responsibility to get you every piece of material around that particular storyline, and then fill in the blanks because I was there. So basically, I'm a tool for them in the discovery process. If they said, hey, we'd really love to find a performance of The Stranger from as close to when the album was written and done, I already know where that is, and then I fill in the area around that particular period of time, which then leads them to go down the narrative line. So it's true collaboration, but decisions of narrative content is all theirs, 100%. So that was a little bit difficult to navigate, but also I think navigated very successfully, because when you watch this film, it's pretty damn honest. I mean, she got Billy to go there, and that was a shock. That was a surprise,
a pleasant surprise. Yeah. How did you decide which family and friends and other musicians and things to reach out to include in interviews as well? Because there was, having seen the documentary, you've got different artists from different eras, like well-known musicians, but then also obviously people close to Billy and his family and past partners and all of that. So how did you reach out to them?
It became very important, especially in part one, to tell the story of Billy and Elizabeth, because that was when I first started working with them. I often say that they both hired me. It wasn't just Billy, because Elizabeth was very much in the mix even before she was his manager. And I knew that you cannot tell the story of what I call the big bang of Billy Joel's career, which is, the turnaround from Turnstiles into The Stranger into, the blast off. So what was important for us to put together was an environment where Elizabeth would feel comfortable telling her story. So it was a natural thing. If we didn't have Elizabeth, that first part of the film would have been a completely different story. I don't think you would have learned as much. And I think it was key to telling the story. So I think it was sort of, a no-brainer.
Yeah, that really does come across that, the first half really honors that she was, a muse, a manager, a life partner, and it's very integral to all of this. And
well, listen, when you look at the big turnaround of, Billy Joel from being a band member, then doing Attila, then going through that whole, relationship blow up with his best friend and his best friend's wife, and that then turning him into a singer-songwriter, that giving him the core blast off of being able to write about his feelings. And they were wrapped around, those feelings around her, that then, tell the fan of Billy, wait a minute, the origin story is really a human story. It's everyday. It's a romance. It's love. Love and heartbreak motivate, the greatest art in the world. So that was important. As far as all of the other people, look, Susan and Jessica said, well, if we're going to talk about his mother, we need to talk to his sister. We need to talk to his aunt. If we're going to talk about his father, then we need to get a hold of his brother and talk to his brother. So, those decisions of going for those people were sort of laid out when you lay out Billy's life. As far as the musicians, there's people, all of those people that spoke in this film know him and love him, and have either shared the stage with him or sat in the studio with him, or just, plain hang. And they were all absolutely willing to talk about it. Remember, no one has ever, this is the first documentary.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure people were clamoring to be a part of it, and you had to edit who was in it.
It's very funny because there's layers and layers and layers of, how you get through it. And what I was able to do, like for Bruce Springsteen, is managed by John Landau. He has his publicists, and you go through the normal channels to get a hold of him. I happen to be very good friends with his tour manager. Like, I've known him for 45 years. So they were like, Bruce isn't returning. They're not returning. I said, hold on.
Yeah.
little email. Hey, George, do you think Bruce could sit down for an hour with Susan? Oh, absolutely. When? Like
Yeah.
that's what happened. That's what my function in this really, paid off because look, it's not me, it's Billy,
Right.
but I'm the proxy. So I was able to do all that stuff. And I think, to get Paul McCartney to talk about it, to get John Mellencamp to talk about him, to get Don Henley to talk about him with such glowing, really honest observations, I think is a blessing. And it's also a testament to who he is.
Well, and you are also in it. So how did it feel to be a producer, but also one of those talking heads as well?
Weird.
Yeah, was it weird to watch it back and see yourself in the mix there?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, it wasn't so weird to watch. It was just like, I know Susan and Jessica made selects of what all the other people said in the film. But when it's you, I look at it and go, yeah, but I said more. But I think I said that better. Oh, wait, if that's what you're going to use, let me go in and re-record it so it sounds better. Yeah, so there was a little bit of that. One of our other producers, Gary Getzman with Tom Hanks, he sort of urged her. He said, you need Steve in there because Steve knows those things. Like who can talk about that particular thing? Well, there's Steve. So
yeah.
So that's how I ended up in there.
Naturally had to happen. Yeah.
Things I was the right person to be the commentary at that point.
So from a production-y standpoint, there's several producers and executive producers on this project. When you have multiple people in that role, how would you say you'd kind of divide up the responsibilities and contributions of each of the producers?
Well, all have a role. Some are ceremonial and big in reputation. When you look at Tom Hanks and Gary, they're very busy. They trusted Susan. They trusted me. Todd Milner and Sean Hayes, who originated the project with me, were also, key, and they're very important to the reputation of the project. All of them participated in the notes. Everybody got a chance to take a look at this. Giving notes on a project, that's the director's option to take those notes, act on them or not. I found Susan and Jessica to be incredibly collaborative, and every note got heard. Some got implemented, and the ones that didn't get implemented were argued back for reasons, and everybody said, "Oh, well, I understand, so that's why."
Yeah, that sounds like really respectful communication about.
Very respectful. Look, I go back to the thing. It's Billy. Billy's fairy dust. Like, everybody wants to do the right by Billy. If you never want to upset him, you never want to hurt him, and you only want to support him. And that's where everybody came through it. And then on the other side, on the real producer side, the people who worked, and not to say that the executives didn't have anything to do.
Everyone has different roles.
Everyone has different roles. But, John Jackson, who we brought in as an archive producer, was Herculean because he was the guy who brought all the stuff from the Billy camp. And Katie Ash, who was the other producer, was really the person who made sure all of that stuff got delivered. And she was an incredible resource for Origins and for, hey, you got this concert, but but I found that there's another concert in another place. Do you have that? She was instrumental. Emma Pildes, who's the other associate producer, was unbelievable in sourcing original footage and being relentless on quality. And one of the things I felt was very important to me in the beginning of this was that any piece of archive and any piece of music was the best version or the highest quality of that. Because I find so often in music documentaries that because it's hard to collect these archives and they're all antiquated and it's a big budget item to like remix and to get those things at the highest quality. And I was like, look, I'm the visual guy and this is my thing. Like, if you're going to use this concert, it's got to be the best version.
Yeah.
And if it's a really bad copy of it, you got to spend the money to restore it. So I set a bar where no one even questioned it. So Emma and everybody else were like, we know that this is what we have to do. To be fair, they came from the same place. They were not going to make a Billy Joel documentary without the best possible quality of all of the archives. We brought in Bradshaw Lee, who was Phil Ramone's engineer. He basically touched every piece of Billy Joel recorded music, remixed, cleaned up, made instrumental versions because, as you know, or as you may know, there was I think there's 110 Billy Joel songs in this. And that was Susan and Jessica's plan, that every piece of music, with the exception of a couple of reference pieces, was all going to be Billy Joel as score. So a lot of these songs pulled the vocals out, so you had them as underscore. We had Billy Joel's guitar player and his producing partner do some reinventions of certain songs to make them feel original, that they were based on Billy Joel melodies, but they set the tone and the mood.
Yeah, it fits right in with that tapestry of the actual songs.
Yeah, so I'm very proud of the technical stuff. Hey, listen, we're very lucky. HBO, we had a really incredible network that was willing to pony up to pay for this. So
yeah, I mean, some of that earlier stuff, just the equipment that it was filmed on doesn't even translate to the sizes that you might need to see it now and things like that.
Well,
and there's home videos and things too, not just professionally recorded concerts and things.
And also here's the other part of it. Billy didn't like cameras, right? He didn't like being filmed. We were not the kind of, guys who, all of us had Super 8 movies, cameras, like, put that camera away was more often the quote that you heard from anybody else. That's why there's not a lot of studio, because he wouldn't want cameras in the studio. It would affect how people, because we were all hams. Everybody wanted to perform. So if there's a camera there, you wouldn't get the work done. And so a lot of that early stuff, even the stuff, Stranger, 52nd Street, Nylon Curtain, there were very, very few original purpose-built footage for that stuff. Mm-hmm. So what you were left with were news coverage, local news, and some live performances that were occasionally filmed. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff there that the only version of it is the mono audio track on the videotape that were provided by the Old Grey Whistle Test. Or occasionally we had two venues that we were able to actually film at because they had in-house cameras. The Stranger and Stiletto and a couple of those performances in the early part of the film, they're just, luckily live coverage that we had that Brian Ruggles, the sound engineer, mixed and sent a stereo feed down the line. So taking all that stuff and restoring it. The other thing too is we found some on the Piano Man footage and the signing day footage didn't exist. It was in boxes, unmarked film. And when we were going through the archives, we were like, what is this? Wow. And we had a transfer, and it was like, we knew that we recorded the audio, but we didn't know that there was film. So, it's, we're proud of the volume of stuff. It's a big job.
Yeah. There's a lot that, any documentary always has that element of discovery when you're dipping into the archives. And then it sounds like you had that sort of, it's a creative challenge when you don't have that much for a particular thing you want to cover, but it's a completely other challenge when you have too much coverage too and deciding what to keep and what not. I was curious also, given that how much content you had, was this originally approached thinking it would be like a feature or a series, or how did it land on being a 2.5 hour part documentary?
I think everyone was a little scared that it was going to be too long of a story to tell in one film. And at one point it was 3 parts. And I think that when the rough cuts of the 3 parts were put together, I particularly loved the structure because it had some cliffhangers and it had 2 opens and all that stuff. So I like that. But I think everyone realized that the right size of it was to be in 2 parts. They felt it was a little long. So I think the original running times were a little bit more than 2.5 for each episode that got trimmed by 8 or 9 minutes. And I think what ends up happening in all films and in all documentaries is that, once you stop being precious and you put the litmus test of, does this particular scene serve the overall arc of what you're making? And you're brutal, the filmmaking term, you kill babies. Yeah. It's like, I love this thing so much, and there were things that lasted up until the last cut, mm-hmm. as is common. Yeah. So I think it landed at 2 parts because that's how it landed. And Susan and Jessica were relentless about this. They would never leave anything in. They would take something out to experiment mm-hmm. how it would feel while it was gone. I mean, it was amazing to watch. Part of the reason for that was that Susan had a very clear vision of the film she wanted to make. She shared it with no one. I didn't know what it was. I said, "Are you going to give us an outline?" "I'm not giving you an outline. I don't write it." Meanwhile, she had a very
Has
clear
she since
outline.
told you?
Yeah, well, she basically, she says, "I made the movie that I intended to make from the beginning. It has every element that I planned to do." So, I'm like, great. I would have liked to have known, but that's not her style, to quote a Billy Joel song. So she very clearly had a vision in that anything in Billy's life that did not serve the creation of this body of work did not belong in the film. So if there was a part of his life that was extraneous, hey, listen, there's some major things that happened in his life that aren't in the film. I mean, the stadium tours that he did by himself were massive. That had to be left behind. He did it, moving out, the Twyla Tharp. There was a whole sequence about the Twyla Tharp moving out that when you put that in context, it was a road to go down that's very interesting and could probably be its own little movie.
But it was a detour off that main road.
It was a detour because it was somebody else interpreting Billy's music.
Yeah.
And so the purpose of putting that in is what? Well, then you now show the audience how people respect this body of work. Well, we already know that, so those kind of choices, they were hard to make. I mean, they were very hard to make. There's other relationships in there that aren't covered, like he's had a lot of other relationships besides his 3 wives that all were very important to him. It's 4 wives.
So I was like, 4. It's 4.
Well, three exes.
Yeah.
This one is, she's here for the long haul. So, so that's a real thing. Even Billy to this day, the response to this film is, overwhelming and really positive. And he's very much waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Has he seen it? Do you know? What does he think of it?
Oh, yeah. Well, he watched it. He watched it sitting next to me on my couch. And I was like, my shoulders were up to my ear. I was trying to not look out, because a lot of these things are painful for me to watch, but I didn't know how he was going to take it. So I'm putting myself in his head, but I can't, because I don't know how he thinks. As much as I know him, I don't know how he's going to react. So afterwards, he watched it and he was like, wow, it's a great movie, even if I wasn't in it. Like he really, really appreciated it. And since then, I sent him a link. I sent him a couple of links. And since then, he's watched it a couple more times, I think, because he quotes it, or he made a comment the other day about, gee, I can't believe that they filmed long time. I look like I hadn't taken a shower in 3 hours, so I know I think he's kind of overwhelmed at the response. He told me he went out to dinner and he couldn't believe everybody in the restaurant told him how great the documentary was. It's a little overwhelming for him. As he says in the film, he's not comfortable.
Yeah, he's very, likes to just make songs about the relationships in his life and move on. And I always thought that was interesting that he's kind of made a soundtrack of his life and his relationships and how those people make him feel. Because, in life, you don't really remember specific details. Looking back, you remember how people make you feel. And these are little capsules of that, and they're very relatable and human. And that's why I think often people could use a lot of his songs to create the soundtracks of their life and everything, which I think was so great. And one thing that I found fascinating in watching this is I was born in 1983. And so, but watching this documentary, I recognized and could hum along to basically every single song without necessarily, I was like, oh, that's right, this too, and this too, and this too. Because it's seeped into all of our popular culture and stuff as well. So I love that this documentary gave me and other people who might not be such huge super fans devoted from the beginning a deeper appreciation of just how many points in our sort of history he's kind of touched on and made a point.
Well, and that was what was important, that the filmmakers included so many tracks because of that exact reason. It's funny. Billy's clever, dumb like a fox is the saying, because he spent his entire career obfuscating the meanings of these songs. Yeah, they're kind of about this. And yeah, they're kind of about her. But really, they're not about any of that stuff. And now pulling back, lifting the hood and showing the engine of all of these songs for real has now given everybody, given fans a different understanding of songs, which means you go listen to them again through a different lens. And they're still relatable to you in your life experience, but now you see them, now you hear them in a different way. And I think it makes what's old new again. I knew the story of You May Be Right, but I didn't really know until I saw that bit of archive where he actually described the event. And I'm like, I've heard You May Be Right since we started playing it live from the beginning. And I'm like, I thought it's a really clever turn of the phrase. And yeah, I know he rode a motorcycle, but I had no idea that it happened one night. Like he drove home in the rain, and his wife said, "You're crazy." And, and he said, "Well, yeah, but I'm the lunatic you're looking for." That. Oh, okay. That's a testament to the quality of the songs. It's a testament to the quality of the songwriting. And it's a testament to the fact that Billy does write about all of our life experiences in a way that we can understand them. It's not high-minded, metaphorical poetry. It's like real, everyday language. And that's creative and artistic, but it's everyday.
Yeah, and really well performed and played, and yeah. Oh, it's so great. So how long from the beginning of kind of locking in and deciding you were going to do this to it, being distributed, did it take overall to make this?
The first shooting was in November of 2022. When we got back together after COVID, we took a year off because of COVID, obviously, and we were getting ready to go back to the garden, and we set up a rehearsal which is actually the opening of part 1. And that's the first time we all got together in 2022. I think we spent about 6 or 8 months before that sort of mapping out the plan. So really, I think, 4 years probably. I think my biggest gap in all of it was waiting to see that first cut, because they wouldn't show me anything, and I didn't want to see anything. Part of the reason was that I didn't want to be invested, because the minute I saw it the first time, I wouldn't be able to be honest about my feelings about it. And Susan was really smart, and Jessica was really smart. They waited to screen me anything until they were pretty much landed on what it was. And that first screening was overwhelming to me. I was in tears. I was like, am I crying because it's finally come to life, or am I crying because of the way the narrative is constructed? And I will tell you that we just screened it for some friends. I hadn't watched it in I don't know, a couple of weeks or something like that, and I cried again. So it works for me. It works for me, and I think that's really a testament to the film that Susan and Jessica made.
Yeah. Go female directors too.
Oh, 100%. Well, listen, Billy and I all we do is surround ourselves with strong words.
And that's why you're so successful. No, one of the reasons.
No doubt about it. And I would tell Elizabeth that to her face. In fact, I have. So
good. Yeah. Excellent. We mentioned, obviously, there's literally over 100 of these songs throughout it and everything, but you're also the producer on the 7-hour digital only companion album, featuring a 100-song collection, also called Billy Joel and So It Goes, with some never before heard audio and 8 unreleased tracks. Can you tell people a little bit more about that and how they can find it?
Yeah, well, my concept for the soundtrack was based on an album that was one of my favorite records growing up, and it was a Frank Sinatra record that came out called Frank Sinatra Man and His Music, that had dialogue between the tracks where Frank would comment on particular tracks. And it wasn't so much, I recorded this at that time. It was what was going on in his life at a particular time. And I played that, I wore that out. So when the idea of the soundtrack came out, what I wanted to do was provide the listener context of why we use these particular songs. A lot of the material is single source material, meaning that there's a performance from a particular moment in time that's only that is only on a piece of videotape.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a multi-track. It's not a stereo track. It's not a studio recording. And we used bits and pieces of it in the film, but we used bits and pieces of it in the film. There's an entire song there. So what I set out to do was give the Billy Joel fan a companion to the documentary so that you could hear them in their entirety.
Yeah.
In that process, you discover all of these songs that have never been heard before, and all these songs that are, from demo tracks, from piano vocal demos that we were able to uncover that became part of bits and pieces in the film. And now we were able to provide the entire track accompanying with the dialogue that leads into that particular performance.
Oh, okay.
So it's a true companion to the documentary. The reason it's so long is that I didn't want to leave anything out.
Yeah, it's like you're providing the full index of things that are referenced in the document or whatever, or in the report.
You're providing an index, but you're also providing a musical companion that's complete, which you never do in soundtracks. Soundtracks are, the main theme, the opening theme, the romantic theme. This is and it's a comprehensive take on his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some great things in there. There's a performance of For the Longest Time, which was done. We brought some cameras in for one show in DC to do some kind of local something or other. And Billy said, let's go into the shower and sing Longest Time.
Ooh.
And we had one camera set up.
Acoustics.
And because that's a cappella, you sound in a shower. So that's in the
Wow, that's
documentary.
awesome.
There are Cold Spring Harbor tracks that are just the original demos before Artie Rip got a chance to do anything. And those no one's ever heard.
That's amazing. Definitely, I know even hearing that there's new and different versions of things, especially for super fans, they'll be extra excited because of, Billy not writing new stuff for a while. But this is amazing. I know like myself and many people that have seen it, it's a fantastic documentary. It's really well done. What do you think you want people to come away with when they watch this?
I hope people walk away getting a complete understanding of the gift we've gotten by this man. I'm fortunate because I lived it, but in doing this film with Susan and Jessica, I've learned how incredibly special and how incredibly unique and how incredibly blessed we are to have this body of work. And I just hope people walk away feeling like, man, I thought this guy was great, but I had no idea. That's the line I want to walk away with.
Well, it succeeded here. I know I'm now going to look into his classical album as well, which is exciting to know about that. And also just what's next for you now that you're doing more of these types of creating these new projects?
I have what I'm told is the normal state of play in the film industry and television. I'm in development on 7 projects.
Whoa, okay.
We've got a couple of Billy Joel centric projects that are now, across the finish line. We're going to start producing one of them for History Channel. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet.
Fine. We'll find out in the future.
I also have a really dear, an old friend who's given me the rights to 2 of his novels that I'm developing with Toluca and MGM for a limited series in a film.
So fiction?
Fiction. Yeah. Well, it's historical fiction.
Okay.
And has nothing to do with Billy Joel. And, unless I can get him to,
right. There'll be a song somewhere in it. Yeah. No.
And then I'm still actively involved in the Billy Joel Archive project. I've got, we discovered when we were pulling some footage, I discovered a concert that I didn't know that we had shot, that I'm now editing. That'll probably be something we will release next year. And then we're, as the archives open up, there's more opportunities to provide fans more things. So I firmly do my Billy Joel stuff, and then that leads into all the other stuff. And then, kind of enjoy my life,
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Awesome. Well, that sounds fantastic. We'll keep our eyes peeled for a lot of that stuff. Go see the documentary if you haven't. It's fantastic. And thank you so, so much for not only doing everything you've done to make the content of the documentary possible, but for helping put the documentary itself together.
Thank you very much. I'm glad it's being received as it is. And it's kind of great being streaming because I get texts like every day, like people I haven't spoken to in 20 years.
Yeah.
Hey, I just saw your movie. So.
and you're in it too. So you could be like, I just saw you in it.
Who knows? If I get an agent asking to cast me on something, then I'll really like.
Okay.
No.
You heard it here first, people. He's kind of open to the idea.
Oh, you never know. I did TMZ the other day and I was like, hey, I don't look so bad.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think anyway, good luck with everything, all of your future creative endeavors. And thank you again so much for talking with us.
Thank you. It was great.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIF, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candice Bloch, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakersSpotlight.com for more information.
That